Charlie, with that out of the way, brother, apologies for the Skype kind of connection that we've got going on here. But I'm so glad to have you back, and especially on my birthday week, dude. How you doing?
I know. Happy birthday to you tomorrow. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, 43, man. I used to look forward to my birthdays. Not so much anymore, Charlie. Not so much, dude.
Yeah, I know the feeling, but it's
Yeah.
okay. It just means you've made it one more year. You've been doing what you're doing. Hey, listen, not every researcher in this field has made it. You know what I mean? They've either given up or they've been taken down or they've been silenced. So the fact that you're still doing it is always a good sign. We're glad to continue to have you around. Happy birthday to you, my man.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. And yes, they don't mind so much when you talk about CERN and the AI and the Sasquatch and the woo and things that I usually tend to cover. But there are some topics out there, as we were talking about before the show, that are very, very real. And they can have very real world ramifications and consequences on the back of it. And I suspect that the topic that we're going to be covering tonight is one of those topics because, Charlie, you've been doing the deep dive into a very evil character indeed, and that is
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein. Now, you emailed me today. You said, Kev, I've got uncovered a lot of connections with this cat, ties in with a lot of the stuff we usually talk around, and it might take you maybe an hour or so to lay this out. We've got 2 hours, Charlie, so I'm going to come to you. What have you found out, man?
Well, I mean, it's funny that did you ever think we'd get to a point where this would be mainstream news? You know, the headline, I don't know how it is in the UK, but here in the United States, it's everywhere. Epstein's the lead story and has been for a week straight. This is sort of unheard of. You know, there's a time when they would bury these stories. So it actually kind of makes you a little suspicious in the sense that, okay, mainstream media, we've been begging you to talk about this character for the last decade. We've been screaming about him, how he got he got a sweetheart deal for 13 months, how he's tied to all of these famous people, how we've got flight logs of all these things. And nothing, right? And now all of a sudden they're on board, just out of nowhere, so to speak. They're on board. The arrest of Epstein a week ago Saturday triggered that, of course, but it also was, but more than that, it was triggered by the unsealing of court records that came in the case of the defamation case that Virginia Roberts filed against Ghislaine Maxwell. And so that was unsealed, and then the floodgates kind of opened up from there. As soon as that happened, then next thing you know, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and is currently still being held. Obviously, he needs to be held without bail. He is a flight risk. He's pledged allegedly his $77 million Manhattan apartment, more like apartment complex, as collateral, but that's worthless because if he's found guilty, they'll take that anyway. So it's pretty obvious to see what he's doing. It's come out lately that he sold the Lolita Express a couple of days ago, a couple of days before he was arrested. I don't know whether that was a legitimate transaction from one party to a disinterested, second party, or if it was something where it's a bit of shell corporation game where you're just moving assets from one to another. I'm not really sure about that, but according to the records, he's now sold the Lolita Express, which was the 727 that he used to fly people all over the place. Still has a Gulfstream 5, which is worth, $40 million or so. So it's not that he's without a transportation. He's got plenty of transportation. The problem is he's just stuck in a jail cell right now. And so everyone is speculating, is he going to rat out the people closest to him? And, I'm not going to go over too much of who Jeffrey Epstein was or who he is, so much as I think that what's more interesting are the people connected to him, because the people that are connected to him are connected to other people as well. And so you start to kind of go down that chain and you see, all right, who are the people closest to Jeffrey Epstein, and then who's in their family, who are their parents. And so starting with, I mean, if we're going to just start, let's just start at the top as to where to get his money, right? Nobody seems to know where he got his money. Well, the latest, so he got a job teaching high school for the Dalton School, right? He wasn't, I don't think he was an actual teacher. He's more like a tutor that was brought in. It's a prestigious school in Manhattan. From there, he worked with Jimmy Kay. He worked with some of the people from Bear Stearns. He tutored one of the head guy's kid. From there, he got to be close with them, and then he was brought into Bear Stearns. He worked for Jimmy Kay there. These are some Bear Stearns. They were knee deep in the financial shenanigans that brought down the economy in 2008. He had been a part of Bear Stearns. He left a long time ago in the 80s. So the main person, after Jeffrey Epstein left Bear Stearns, he started his own hedge fund, right? And so he started to manage people's money. And this is where he became a billionaire, right? It was from this hedge fund that he had started. Well, I don't know about that, because there's no indication that he actually ran a hedge fund. In fact, the people that are high ranking in Wall Street that sort of move in those circles, they talk quite a bit, of course, and nobody knows anybody that did any trades with J. Epstein and Company, which was the name of his hedge fund. They described it as, his operation seems a whole lot like Bernie Madoff's, which is to say a non-existent trading desk, right? He's not trading securities. He's pretending to trade securities, or he's pretending to be a hedge fund, but he's not actually doing any deals because nobody out there in Wall Street had done any deals with him. They knew who he was, but nobody had ever really worked with him. All they could tell was that he had one big client, and that client was Les Wexner. I'm going to butcher this guy's name every time I say it because
it's a tricky one. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Leslie Wexner. Now, who is this guy? This guy's like an 89-year-old billionaire. He owns a company called Limited, right? So Limited, if you go to any mall in America, I don't know about the UK, but if you go to any mall in America, you'll find the Limited store or Limited Men's as well. You'll find Victoria's Secrets. You'll find Bath and Body Works. So these are the companies that Les Wexner owns, right? So he is, estimates of his net worth are somewhere between $5 and $6 billion. So he's got a lot of money. But he's got a legitimate business, right? He sells clothes and underwear. Les Wexner is thought to be Jeffrey Epstein's only client, right? So he put his money in, he let him manage it. That penthouse that we just talked about in Manhattan, that $77 million penthouse was given by Les Wexner to Jeffrey Epstein for $0, according to the transaction records. So that's an interesting thing right there. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean necessarily that it's anything shady, but I don't know about you. There aren't too many people in my life in a huge hurry to give me $77 million worth of real estate for free as a thanks for something.
No, that sounds just a tad kind of dodgy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when news of this broke, did Victoria's Secret, I think the share price of that took a nosedive as well, didn't it, because of the connections between these two?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Yeah, I remember.
It could have, could have the opposite effect. I mean, look at Facebook. Facebook just got hit with a $5 billion fine by the FCC, and their stock went up because they thought, oh, wow, that's less of a fine than what we thought we were going to pay. Now, this is a different situation, of course, but still, when it comes out that you have an association with Jeffrey Epstein, then that's a bad thing, right? Well, unless you're Bill Clinton, then you just pretend like you never knew him. But yeah, so Les Wexner, by all accounts, is not just a client of his, but there's something more going on between the two of these guys. All right, so if I rewind just a little bit, when Jeffrey Epstein was at Bear Stearns, and he was doing legitimate work. I mean, he's a scumbag and he's a con artist and a thief, but he was working at Bear Stearns and he was working on projects. One of the guys he was working with was a guy named Stephen Hoffenberg. Stephen Hoffenberg considered Jeffrey Epstein to be his protege. He was with him constantly. He showed him the ropes. He showed him how to put deals together on Wall Street. which is probably not the best mentor you want to have, because Stephen Hoffenberg did 20 years in federal prison for running a Ponzi scheme that stole $460 million from people. And Jeffrey Epstein was his right-hand man on that.
Wow.
Didn't do time. Jeffrey didn't, just said, I didn't have anything to do with it, and walked away. But Stephen Hoffenberg has been very public about the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was most definitely involved. He was my right-hand man. He knew everything that was going on there. He was with me 24/7, 7 days a week, was how he described it. And he said that Epstein diverted a lot of that money for himself. So that is part of where Epstein's money came from. Came from a Ponzi scheme that Stephen Hoffenberg was running, that he did 20 years for, and it came from Les Wexner, who miraculously gave him one of the nicest pieces in Manhattan real estate and did it for free. So this is where it sort of starts. So you start to dig in a little bit as to who Les Wexner is. Is he a bad guy? Is he just a guy that likes to make underwear for hot chicks, or like, what's his story? Well, he's on the board of there's a financier in New York named Conrad Black, big time Jewish billionaire, hardcore Zionist guy. Les Wexner's on the board of Conrad Black's Hollinger International. And he sits on this board with a variety of characters, names that you are really going to recognize. This board includes Margaret Thatcher,
Whoa.
Henry Kissinger, Richard Pearl, who is one of the architects of Project for a New American Century, a Zionist psychopath who is intent on destroying the world through war, and William F. Buckley. All right, so this is sort of who Les Wexner's, these are some of the people he associates with. In 1991, before any of the Epstein scandal came to light, a group was formed called the Mega Group. And the Mega Group is a group of Jewish billionaires. This is not some sort of like slant or slam against Jewish people. It's a fact. This is Mega Group is a group of Jewish billionaires. That's sort of the requirement to be in it. You've got to be Jewish and you've got to be a billionaire. Okay, so some of the people that are in, it's a very small group, but what they do is they use their power, money, and influence to set things off in a way that benefits Jewish people or Israel on top of that. So members of this group are, some names you might not ring a bell, but I'll explain. There are a couple that you will definitely recognize. The first one is Lawrence Tisch. He's the CEO of Lowe's Group Hotels. Max Lender, who is a bagel magnate. I know it sounds totally stereotypical for there to be a bagel magnate in the Jewish Billionaires Club, but there is. The guy that makes Lender's Bagels is in this group. Charles Schusterman, Harvey Bud Meyerhoff, Max Fisher, Michael Steinhardt, and Leonard Abram. All these are names that don't mean anything to anyone, but they're Jewish billionaires that are involved. Here's a name on this list in this group that'll get your attention: Steven Spielberg.
Whoa.
Yeah. And the group itself was started by two people, Les Wexner and Edgar Bronfman. Now, Edgar Bronfman is a Canadian billionaire, Zionist. He was the president of the Jewish Congress. He's hardcore. He's dead now, but he was hardcore into promoting Jewish affairs, Israeli affairs, and this and that from Canada. Their family business is Seagram's. They're in the alcohol business. They also have a financial services company that partnered with Rothschild. So there's this company called Bronfman Rothschild. I mean, if it doesn't get more like New World Order than that, I don't know what is. But so these are the guys that started Mega Group: Leslie Wexner and Edgar Bronfman. Edgar Bronfman's daughter, Claire Bronfman, is sitting in a jail cell as well right now for being the ringleader of Nexium. Nexium is a child trafficking organization and blackmail organization disguised as a charity. Sound familiar? I wonder who Jeffrey Epstein learned how to run his blackmail operation from. Les Wexner and Edgar Bronfman. They're both doing the same things. Jeffrey Epstein is running a blackmail operation for the Mossad. That's who he is. He's not a hedge fund manager. He's running an entrapment ring. I put this in my book. under the title of We've Been Dancing. The chapter is called We've Been Dancing with Mr. Brownstone, obviously a reference to Guns N' Roses song.
See now, Charlie, this ties in. This is more parallels for me anyway, personally, between the Epstein character in the US and Jimmy Savile over here.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we had to wait until Jimmy Savile had passed until we found out everything about him. But in my mind, and a lot of researchers' minds as well, that was purely an intelligence gathering operation where he would go to Checkers every Christmas for his dinner while Margaret Thatcher, there's Margaret Thatcher again, while she was in power, and he would basically pass over all the dirt on anyone in the Conservative Party so that she could control them. And for me, and for a lot of people out there, it was an intelligence gathering operation. It was nothing more than that. His properties were wired for video, for sound, and then the intelligence services, i.e. over here MI5, and probably, the CIA, Mossad, depending on the nationality of the people who were in attendance. So I think there's real parallels between the Savile case that we've seen a long time ago or a while ago and what's going on in America right now. The only difference being, and the only encouraging part for me being, that so far, Epstein at least is still alive, and maybe he'll talk.
Yeah, well, frankly, I'm a bit surprised he's still alive.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy Savile was running a blackmail operation as well. And these are, if this was a Venn diagram and you had interlocking circles, there are many characters that you would find with overlapping that would be in the overlapping area here. Margaret Thatcher is one of them. You're going to find lots of people tied to the British royal family involved in this, up to their knees in this. So a little bit more about Les Wexner. He's also on the board of the Aspen Institute. So who else is on the board of the Aspen Institute? Aspen Institute is kind of like a Council on Foreign Relations operation, right? So you've got legendary psychopath Madeleine Albright is on there, who once said that it was worth it, the cost was worth it, that 500,000 Iraqi children had to die because of U.S.-led sanctions. She considers that to be worth it. So she's a piece of human garbage. There's no doubt about that. Another member, kind of an unusual member to be on the Aspen Institute's board, Katie Couric, who was the an anchor for the Today Show here in the United States. Also on the flight logs going to Jeffrey Epstein's island, by the way, I'll point out. Michael Eisner is on this list. He was the CEO of Disney. Laura Lauder from the Estee Lauder family is on there. Margot Pritzker. Now, the Pritzker name is not a name that really rings a bell. They're involved in the Hyatt Corporation for hotels and everything. But the Pritzker family is the #1 largest financier of the trans movement.
Oh, really?
For whatever that's worth. And also on this board with Les Wexner is one of the worst people in the world, Condoleezza Rice, as well. So this is the group of people that are sort of involved in it. So this was the guy who Jeffrey Epstein considered to be a mentor to him, brought him into the business, showed him the ropes. So he's a guy with a lot of money, but there's a lot of people with a lot of money out there. This guy has a lot of money, and he has ties to government agencies and government agents and people that are former heads of state, secretaries of defense, and all of these, very, very powerful people. And these are Les Wexner's circle of friends. So then you look at, all right, that's who got him started. But who was his right-hand person during this whole thing? And that's Ghislaine Maxwell. And I know we're coming up in a couple minutes to a commercial, so I'll keep it brief here, but we'll pick it up after the break. And just so you know, Ghislaine Maxwell is the lady that you'll see with the short black hair and a lot of the videos with him. She's the daughter of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell is dead. He died in 1991. He is a Mossad spy. He was a spy for the Israeli Secret Service, the Mossad. He was involved in media in England, and he had made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, and had gotten himself involved with the Mossad and was being used as a spy. And part of what he did with the Mossad wound up leading to him being thrown off of his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, named after his daughter, where they found him floating near the yacht, dead, believed to have been injected with poison by the Mossad agents that were worried he was going to talk.
And we're almost on the break there, and I remember that, big time. And we'll get back into this on the other side, folks. We've got Charlie Robinson here. Check out his website, The Octopus of Global Control. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're tuned into today's Kev Baker Show. We've got Charlie Robinson, the author of The Octopus of Global Control. He is here with me today, and during the first part of this show, Charlie was starting to show the connections of Jeffrey Epstein. Who is Jeffrey Epstein? Where did he get his money from? And we found out now that there's this character, and I'm going to probably butcher his name as well, but he owns Victoria's Secret, Les Wexner, and he gave him, was it 77 million? Charlie, is that what you were saying?
Well, he gave him this building, and the building is valued at $77 million, and it was transferred to him at a cost of $0. That's something that's, as someone that has worked in real estate for almost 20 years, that's usually like something that would happen if it was after a trust sale or a probate sale, or you were lining up things for your family. It's an unusual arrangement.
It is. And then as we started as you started connecting the dots, we were going into Les Wexner and his kind of connections through through the Hollinger International. And then we got to the mega group, these Jewish billionaires. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that led us to Mossad and Maxwell, Robert Maxwell. Yeah. And that was big news over here in the UK at the time when he passed away, or when he was knocked off. And it's almost like an open secret that this guy was blatantly working for Mossad. And as you were saying during the break, there was even a book written about his death, right?
Yeah, it's called The Assassination of Robert Maxwell, Israel's Super Spy. They're not beating around the bush.
This isn't a conspiracy theory, folks. This is very, very real. So, Charlie, you've whetted my appetite, and I'm really keen to see where this goes from here, dude.
So if you want to know, so Robert Maxwell was working with the Mossad, and part of what he was doing was he was one of the guys, not the front man, but he was one of the guys involved in the Mossad stealing the Promise software. Are you familiar hearing about the Promise? It's called
yes.
PROMIS software.
Absolutely.
Spy program. So what happened was the Promise software spy program was stolen by the Israelis from a company called Inslaw, and they were designing it to manage court records and things like that. They were designing it for legitimate purposes. The Inslaw was making this really great program to help manage governmental court cases and things like that, trying to keep track of it. So and we're talking about something. This was in the I want to say it was in the 80s, right? So the Israelis stole this Promise software, and then they built a back door into it, and then they started selling it to foreign governments. And they, of course, didn't tell the foreign governments that there was a back door in there, but they were selling this software like crazy. And of course, Inslaw is like, what is going on here? And like, they filed lawsuits against the government, and they said, you guys took this and you stole, and then the Israelis stole this. And so it turned into this big thing. Danny Casolaro wrote a book about this and was murdered for it. Do you remember the name of the book that Danny Casolaro wrote about the Promise software?
Oh, I've done shows on this, as I have with people in the past. When you say the name of this book, it's going to absolutely kill me, because I know I've got the name in my mind. Go for it.
The Octopus.
There you go. Damn. Yeah. See, I told you we were going to end up talking about stuff that gets us killed today, Charlie. What are you doing to me, man?
I'm just saying, man. This guy. So Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was an Israeli spy who was involved in stealing the Promise software. Danny Casolaro wrote a book about it called The Octopus. This is part of the octopus, right? This is sort of like, so who is Jeffrey Epstein? You know how people will say, oh, you're only as good as the company that you keep, you know? Well, who's the company that Jeffrey Epstein keeps? It's Ghislaine Maxwell. That's his close associate. Now, people have labeled her as being a madam, but that's an incorrect term, because being a madam implies that you are selling the services of prostitutes.
Yeah.
These weren't prostitutes. These were kids. She was a human trafficker. She's not a pimp. She's not a madam. She's not one of those. She's not running an escort service. She's running a child trafficking ring. Okay. These girls were not old enough to consent to this. Most of them. They get to a certain age, and then some of them were brought on and kept, retained, and were sent out to go solicit more young girls, and people are started to hear this story. But Ghislaine Maxwell, just to be clear, she's not a madam. She's a child trafficker. I think that we need to make sure that we refer to her for what she is, and she's going to prison for the rest of her life as soon as this gets done. So she lost a defamation lawsuit that was brought against her by Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who was so if you know the story of who this is, and you see the picture of Prince Andrew with the young blonde girl,
yeah,
that's Virginia Roberts.
Got you.
That's who brought the lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell for defamation of character. Ghislaine Maxwell said, this girl's a liar. We never did any of this stuff to her. She's full of it. She's from a broken home. All those things that you use to slander people that are telling the truth about you. That's what she did. And so Virginia Roberts' lawyer said, oh, yeah, well, we're going to sue you for defamation of character. And they did, and they won, and they collected millions of dollars from her. And part of this is what just got unsealed. So we know that Ghislaine Maxwell is a certified scumbag. And what's even more reprehensible about her is that she's a woman doing this to girls.
Yeah.
It's bad all the way around, but I see that as being extra disrespectful, but whatever. I guess at this point, if you come from this family and you're associating, your best friend is Jeffrey Epstein, I guess morals and doing the right thing are long gone. But so this is what's going to kind of blow your mind a little bit. The sister of Ghislaine Maxwell is a lady named Christine Maxwell. She's the co-founder of a company called Chiliad. It's a software company involved in data mining. This is the company whose software was used by the FBI's counterterrorism data warehouse. So the FBI has a counterterrorism data warehouse, and the software they use to manage that is created by Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, who who's the daughter of Robert Maxwell, an Israeli super spy, or at least according to the book.
Wow.
Christine Maxwell, is married to a guy named Roger Molina. This is what's going to blow your mind. He is the principal investigator for NASA.
What?
What is right? Roger Molina, the husband of Christine Maxwell, his dad was the first director of NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, started JPL with Jack Parsons.
Oh, come on.
Nope.
Man.
This guy later left NASA and went on to join the United Nations as the head of UNESCO's Division of Scientific Research. And he was a member of the Communist Party. So we've got Ghislaine Maxwell, who's tied to Jeffrey Epstein and everything that he's involved with. You've got Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, who is the co-founder of a software company that works directly with the FBI's counterterrorism unit. You've got that lady's husband is the principal investigator for NASA, and that guy's dad founded JPL with Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, and all those maniacs out in Pasadena.
And we know what Jack Parsons was heavily into. I mean, he was into the
He
old
was the
Crowley,
occult.
the OTO. He was trying to like create moon babies and things like that out in the desert. Dude.
So what do they accuse Jeffrey Epstein of doing on the island? Satanic ritual abuse. Family business. The Maxwell family business is in spying, data harvesting, and satanic ritual abuse. This is who is surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. This is a dirty, dirty group of people, obviously. But their ties to some of what's going on worldwide in the scientific industry is very alarming. Now, this is going to bother you quite a bit, Kev, but it's got to be said. Jeffrey Epstein was also funding tons of artificial intelligence programs around the world. Do you remember?
Do I want to know this?
You are going to know it whether you want to know it or not, because it plays into this whole story of how everybody is connected. Do you remember the Sophia robot in Saudi Arabia that was granted citizenship?
Do I remember it? Dude, it was one of my finest moments on KBS, because the guy who helped create Sophia, Dr. Ben Gertzel, he retweeted one of the shows that I'd done about Sophia. So yeah. I know who Sophia is, big time.
Yeah. She was developed by Ben Gertzel and David Hansen of Hansen Robotics.
Yep.
Do you know where Ben Gertzel got his money to build Sophia?
Let me guess, Jeffrey Epstein. Yep.
$6.5 million from Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein wanted him to create emotional software, was what he described it. Emotional software for virtual reality applications. They created a company called SingularityNet. Ben Gertzel started that with Jeffrey Epstein's money. Hansen Robotics, who's the company that built this Sophia robot, brought in Ben Gertzel to help co-develop it. Hansen Robotics has ties to Ray Kurzweil and Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, of course, is the founder. Well, he was one of the first guys to put money into Facebook. He put $500,000 in and cashed out $5 billion. But he also is the founder of Palantir. Palantir is a data mining company funded by In-Q-Tel, which is the venture capital arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. And Palantir was created primarily to work with the Department of Defense. So Peter Thiel is on the advisory board of this group called the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. Who's the director of research there? Ben Gertzel. So Hansen Robotics has introduced a new product called Little Sophia for girls ages 8 years and up. Who's the chief scientist behind this Little Sophia AI robot for 8-year-old girls? Ben Gertzel, with Epstein's money. So Epstein is financing the creation of AI robotic dolls for kids, girls specifically, for emotional software. I'm telling you right now that there is a connection between pedophilia and artificial intelligence. I don't know the full details of it, but there is something connecting these two.
Wow, I'm sitting here kind of aghast at what you're telling me here. And I can imagine, in the virtual reality kind of field, that these evil people, that they would probably love to go into a virtual scenario, a virtual world, and do all of this kind of stuff that we know they're doing in the real world. But now that you're bringing in this Little Sophia and the fact that children are playing with this as well, that this opens up a huge can of worms. I really don't even know what to make of this. Now, I've got a video from you here. Would you like me to play that right now?
Please.
Yeah, we've got a video, and this is Little Sophia, folks. So you're going to hear this toy. I struggle to call it a toy now after what you've told me, Charlie. But
yeah, just keep in mind when you're watching this that Jeffrey Epstein is very excited that this is out.
Okay, here we go, folks. I'm going to play this right now. Take a listen to this. Okay, now I'm disturbed.
Yep, that's creepy.
Because while I'm thinking about this, I mean, I don't know how little Sophia is made up. I don't have the tech spec in front of me, but imagine this. And I'm speculating here, Charlie. I'll say that right off the bat. But here we have this toy, this robot, and it says in there it's specifically for little girls. Now, does it have webcams, like for eyes?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Yes. So now we're going to have video footage of all these little children going back to a company that has links to Jeffrey Epstein.
And no doubt RFID chips in there and tracking devices so that you know where this doll is. Therefore, you know where the little kid that's playing with it is.
I was going to say, yeah, so you've geotagged the children.
Yeah.
Now, in this sick world, Charlie, I hate to say this because I hate going down this road again. I got damaged covering the whole kind of Hampstead thing. But these people, it's like a business, folks. It's industrial level, and they buy to order. And I hate to say that because I'm talking about human stock here.
Mm-hmm.
So the catalogs of old, the photographs and everything else. I mean, Charlie, we could be literally looking at. You know what I'm trying to say here, dude.
Mm-hmm.
We've got hundreds, thousands of video feeds going into somewhere, and then basically take your pick. And I hate saying it like that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, this is look, if it was just somebody developing an AI doll, that's one thing. But the money that's behind it and the push for this thing to be created by a guy who has the worst reputation of anybody around just makes everything about this extra creepy. And look, for all I know, they're getting in the toy business, right?
Yep.
They're just like, hey, how are we gonna, this life-size Sophia is great and all. We're gonna give her citizenship and do this big PR campaign, but how are we gonna make money? We got to if we can make this make it affordable so that everyone could buy one, that'd be great. Well, okay, I understand. So they make a smaller version, and then they try and sell it to kids. I could maybe almost accept that as a business model if it wasn't backed by Jeffrey Epstein. This is where it creates a huge problem because there's nothing about this guy that is looking forward. I'm trying to improve science and I'm trying to just do my part for humanity to make, bullshit. None of that stuff is happening. Jeffrey Epstein is about entrapment operations and collecting kids. Okay. So when he backs a company that makes a AI doll for 8-year-old girls, we've got problems because there's nothing good happening from that. So let me go on a little bit more about this. So Ben Goertzel, we talked about him, and Jeffrey Epstein's not the only person to funnel money to this guy. Yuri Milner did as well. And Yuri Milner is a tech investor. He's a Russian-Israeli guy who has been in early on Facebook and Twitter, put a lot of money, came out of nowhere with a fortune of money to invest. A lot like kind of reminds me of Prince Aliwad. He sort of got all this money and then he takes it and starts putting it in, drops it in all these companies. And part of the reason why it reminds me of it is because they both are involved in Twitter.
Yeah, and the first time I came across this guy was with his kind of, was it Starshot? He was going to launch like mini spaceships and head them out for Alpha Centauri.
I give Yuri Milner credit. He's trying big things. He's interested in doing big things, but he took some of this money that he has to play with and he funded Ben Goertzel. And so you have to wonder, why did who's Yuri Milner involved with? If he's, I mean, of course he's putting money in Twitter and Facebook and things like that, but who's he? He's obviously Russian. That's been known from the beginning. But what has been buried is the fact that he's also Israeli. He's a dual citizen, and so you start to dig around into who Yuri Milner has invested in or what he's invested in. And what's interesting investment that he made not too long ago into a real estate firm called Cadre, owned by Jared Kushner.
Oh, wow.
So you've got money flowing into Trump's son-in-law's company from a guy who's also putting money into the chief scientist that is also getting money from Jeffrey Epstein. Might be a coincidence. Could be. Not the strongest connection I've ever seen, but there's something to it. But when you were talking about the institutionalizing of these child trafficking, there's a more disturbing connection with Epstein, and that has to do with the tail numbers on the back of his helicopter and one of his planes. I don't think it was the jet. I think it was a smaller plane. You're supposed to have a tail number on the back of your plane or on the back of your helicopter. It's supposed to live with that plane or that helicopter forever. It's not meant to be shared or transported or taken with you from one to the other. Jeffrey Epstein's plane and his helicopter share tail numbers with a plane and a helicopter registered to DynCorp. DynCorp is a military industrial complex company that has been busted for running child trafficking scams out of former Yugoslavia. When you have a little bit more time and we get like on the other side of the break, there's that video that I had for you of Cynthia McKinney. We'll play that, but just so you know that, so the child trafficking in the former Yugoslavia was a huge deal, right? When that was breaking up in the late 90s, Bill Clinton was involved in that, and DynCorp was busted running kids out of that. They're a services company. They go in and they'll train people, train soldiers, set up systems, put systems in place. They're kind of like if you took Halliburton and Blackwater and sort of blended them together. They're sort of a hybrid of that. And it's not the most accurate description, but it's the best one I can come up with. And they are probably one of the most dangerous companies in the world. They get all of their money from the federal government of the United States. They are an asset of theirs wholly. They make $3 billion a year doing that, and they run kids. It's known. That's what they've been busted for.
This takes me back. Oh man, I was in the army in the 90s, and there wasn't many active kind of war zones that you could go to at that point. I'm not proud of the fact that I wanted to go to a war zone, but that's what you've been trained for. So you have to appreciate that, folks. And I was often putting my name on the list to go out there, Charlie. And some of my friends that would come back from there would say there's some really shady crap going on out there. And I'm not saying I heard any of this stuff, okay? But there was definitely a lot more to what was going on than what we were told about in the news, shall we say? Yeah. Yeah.
Not surprised at all. There's anytime there's a war, you get chaos. Yeah. And during that chaos, lots of things that were established get broken down, and lots of new things get established. Pipelines are built. Human trafficking pipelines are built. Drug channels are newly formed. Think of the Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia or the opium poppy fields in Afghanistan. These things are part of it. Part of it is, we're going to invade this country, we're going to break it up. But then there's a whole different component, which is, all right, once we've done that, how are we going to pillage and pilfer this country? How are we going to take all their natural resources? Do they have anything? What does Yugoslavia have that we want? Do they have lithium in there? Do they have gold? Do they have poppies? They don't have all those things, but they got a bunch of kids that are displaced after years of a war. All right, those are worth something. We can sell those to dirty pedophiles, or we can cut out all their organs and sell those on the black market too, something that DynCorp's been accused of for sure. So you've got this black market for people and trafficking. And what are the chances that the tail number of Jeffrey Epstein's plane and helicopter are the exact same tail number, when they shouldn't be, as the company DynCorp that's also running kids?
There's better odds on me winning the UK National Lottery 3 weeks on the trot.
Yep.
We'll be back after the break. 1 hour down, 1 hour to go with Charlie Robinson. I told you he had been doing the deep dive. Wow. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker Show. And it's a Kev Baker Show that is really connecting a lot of dots out there that I certainly wasn't aware of before today's show. And like I've always said, you know, I never claimed to be a researcher. I rely on researchers. And I have to thank you, Charlie, for coming on here today, laying some of this out, what we've got into so far. Because I talk about doing deep dives and things like that. Man, you're so far down the rabbit hole, I can't even see your feet anymore. And I'm halfway down that same rabbit hole with you. So if one of us is screwed, two of us are screwed. So, hey, who knows? We might end up in a cell next to Epstein if he ever does any time for talking about this kind of stuff. But hey, truth is truth. And as we say here on the network, silence is consent. And to not talk about these things, as uncomfortable as they are, there's more and more chance that the agenda that they're trying to push will be fulfilled. So, Charlie, we've got a video to play here, but anything to say to the audience after that first hour that we done there? And I know for some of the listeners...
You might want to take a...
Yeah, I know for some of the listeners, this might be disturbing, and we can only apologize for that, but this is the real world. You know, this is how things work, unfortunately, and we're starting to really get a look at the darker side of things. And this is the apocalypse. You know, the apocalypse.
I was going to say, people might want to take a shower after listening to this. It's so dirty and awful. And
the true meaning of apocalypse is the revelation, you know, the revealing of things. And truth is coming to the surface. And not all truth is comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. It's rarely what people want to hear. It's certainly not what you expect to hear much of the time as well. But again, Charlie, I have to thank you, man, for, you know, the time you've taken to put this together. Because I know from my time covering these topics in the past, it's not easy. You're a father, you've got kids yourself, and for some reason I think that makes it 10 times worse when you're looking into some of these topics. So again, man, I thank you for what you've done here. And wow.
Well, I mean, I feel like I need to. You're nice enough to invite me on the show every month, and I feel like I need to come with something, and so I want to be prepared. And so, unfortunately, yeah, I wish we were talking about unicorns and rainbows, you know. But this is the story in the news, and one of the things that we need to make sure doesn't happen is that we don't let the mainstream media control the narrative on this, because the way they're painting it here in the United States is. You know, it just came out, CNN is garbage. I mean, they're garbage on every level. But yesterday, Chris Cuomo had a statement that said, you know, let's not focus on who Epstein's friends were. After all, none of that stuff matters. Really, Chris.
Wow.
Really, it doesn't matter who his friend. What are the chances that Chris Cuomo is covering for some of his buddies that are tied to it? It matters. It absolutely matters. And the fact that CNN would try to spin this like Epstein's friends don't matter just exposes yet again what a garbage operation they are, and that nobody should be watching CNN. I mean, it is
any of these mainstream medias over in America in particular, because you've brought this up before. Is it the Smith-Mundt Act?
Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012. Yeah, it legalized propaganda in the United States against Americans. It carved out that a certain number of hours each week could be devoted towards propaganda. And then you have Richard Stengel, who is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and used to be the editor-in-chief of Time magazine and self-proclaimed chief propagandist at the Obama White House, who came out and said during a video, during a question and answer session at the Council on Foreign Relations, said, you know, I'm not opposed to propaganda. I think propaganda is good. You got to control the people somehow, and this is, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Well, I have a problem with it. I have a huge problem with it. And I have a huge problem with Richard Stengel. He can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. And you can take Time magazine with him, which is now owned by Mark Benoff, who's started Salesforce. And once again, here we go. We get an agenda coming through these these magazines. I wouldn't be surprised if the cover of Time magazine next week is a story on rainbows and unicorns and not about Jeffrey Epstein, because it's just like the mainstream media to try to bury this. But for whatever reason, it's sort of come out lately. It's become a bigger news story, a story that you can't get away from. But what I don't want to have happen is I don't want the mainstream to sort of just focus on Jeffrey Epstein was a pervert getting massages and not get into the deep details, which is that he was running a blackmail ring for the Mossad and most likely the CIA as well, in conjunction with some high-level people. And he was using this information to either directly influence them, to get people to do what his handlers are telling him that they need these people to do, whether he's using information gathered from them to trade, insider trading through his alleged hedge fund, which he may be managing people's money. He may be just managing their blackmail money. He may get some guy who's the CEO of some oil company down to the island, get him on tape with a 15-year-old girl, and then next thing you know, Epstein knows before anybody else that this company is planning to make a big move or planning to make a big acquisition of some other company, and then he's buying as many shares. I'm just making this up, but I'm just saying this is how it could work. This information is extremely valuable. It's valuable for blackmailing. It's also valuable for insider trading. And there's no reason to think that Jeffrey Epstein would say, oh, all I deal with is human trafficking. I would never get involved in insider trading. Of course he's involved in insider trading. His damn partner said that he was with him on the $450 million Ponzi scheme that landed his partner in prison for 20 years. So we know he's an insider trader as well. So this is garbage. But back to where we left off, and that is just to fill in the blanks, if people are unfamiliar with this company DynCorp and what they were doing. I'm not kidding when I say that they were busted for child trafficking. This was brought up. Dr. Cynthia McKinney, who I quoted in my book several occasions. In fact, I did a whole chapter called The Devil Went Down to Georgia about her. She is grilling reprehensible human being and possible lizard Donald Rumsfeld. So if you can play that, this will be fun for everyone to listen to.
Yeah, I'll play this right now. Here we go.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I watched President...
It might be a bit low, folks, but I've tried to kind of boost it, and that's as good as we're getting. So I hope, can you hear that okay, Charlie? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Here we go.
President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. The president called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children. While all of this was going on, DynCorp kept the Pentagon contract to administer the smallpox and anthrax vaccines and is now working on a plague vaccine through the Joint Vaccine Acquisition Program. Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls? That's my first question. My second question, Mr. Secretary, according to the Comptroller General of the United States, there are serious financial management problems at the Pentagon, to which Mr. Cooper alluded. Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing. And DOD is the #1 reason why the government can't balance its checkbook. The Pentagon has claimed year after year that the reason it can't account for the money is because its computers don't communicate with each other. My second question, Mr. Secretary, is who has the contracts today to make those systems communicate with each other? How long have they had those contracts? And how much have the taxpayers paid for them? Finally, Mr. Secretary, after the last hearing, I thought that my office was promised a written response to my question regarding the 4 war games on September 11th. I have not yet received that response, but would like for you to respond to the questions that I've put to you today, and then I do expect the written response to my previous question, hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you, Representative. First, the answer to your first question is no, absolutely not. The policy of the United States government is clear, unambiguous, and opposed to the activities that you described. The second question.
Well, how do you explain the fact that DynCorp and its successor companies have received and continue to receive government contracts?
I would have to go and find the facts, but there are laws and rules and regulations with respect to government contracts, and there are times that corporations do things they should not do, in which case they tend to be suspended for some period. There are times then that under the laws and the rules and regulations passed by the Congress and implemented by the executive branch, that corporations can get off of out of the penalty box, if you will, and be permitted to engage in contracts with the government. They're not generally not barred in perpetuity.
This company was never in the penalty box. If you could proceed to my second question, please.
The second question. I've forgotten what the second question was.
It's okay, Donald. It's okay. You know, wake up, man. Come on, get with it, dude. You know, he lost the answer down the back of the Pentagon sofa, along with all the money that's down there as well. I can't suffer this character, dude. But yeah, DynCorp, huge role in all of this.
Yeah. Now, and normally you might say, well, they're doing their own thing, and what do they have to do with Jeffrey Epstein? But the fact that they've got these anomalies with the tail numbers on their planes indicates that there's something fishy going on there. And you know, speaking of planes, they've been interviewing people. Reporters have been going down trying to talk to people in the U.S. Virgin Islands to see, you know, the people at the airports near there, to see what they've got, if they've got any information on this. And some of the people that have talked have said, well, you know, obviously there were lots of people, celebrities coming and going. We saw them, you know, they recognize people. They would say, oh, did you see Bill Clinton? Say, no, we never saw Bill Clinton, but of course we have, of course, heard that he was there. And they'd say, did you ever see any kids coming and going from there? And they said, oh yeah, we saw lots of kids going there, and they didn't mention anything about them coming back. Well, where did these kids come from? And they said, well, a lot of these kids came from Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and also from Haiti. Now, you wonder about the Bill Clinton connection to Jeffrey Epstein. It's pretty well known, of course. But what's not really well known is that Laura Silsby, who was an associate working for the Clinton Foundation, was arrested in Haiti with 33 children she was attempting to steal. She was locked up for 6 months for this. It was only after a personal visit from Bill Clinton himself that she was released from prison and he got her home back to the United States. She changed her last name. It's not Laura Silsby anymore. And then she promptly got a job with the Amber Alert system, which is in charge of alerting the public when a child goes missing. So the person that was arrested for stealing children in Haiti gets a job with the Amber Alert system, which is supposed to prevent children from being stolen. That's interesting, wouldn't you say? And then you've got a lot of people at the airport saying, well, we noticed a lot of Haitian kids going there. Wow. I wonder if the 33 kids that were being stolen from Haiti by Laura Silsby were on their way to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Speculation, but it's worth looking into.
Dude, my jaw is hitting the floor here. It truly is, man. This is I've no words.
It's dirty. It's dirty,
bad.
Man.
This is the underbelly, folks. This is the real dark world right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll lighten it up a little bit, as much as it can be lightened up on the island. But Stephen Hawking was on the island.
Oh man.
No. And Jeffrey Epstein also donated several $100 million to Stephen Hawking, Marvin Minsky, and other elite scientists. What the hell is he doing?
And of course, we're not accusing Hawking of anything, but we're showing the connections here because he connects back to Yuri Milner.
Yeah. No, listen. If you're a scientist, you spend half your life. You could probably ask Brendan Drackler this, right? You spend half your time chasing down grant money,
Yeah,
right?
dude. Yeah.
You got to schmooze. You got to meet these rich people. You don't know necessarily the ins and outs of everyone. So I'm with you. I'm not blaming the scientists for this. I'm not saying that, if you're in the business of the scientific community, you're only as good as the money you can generate and raise. And so in that regard, you wind up being a little bit like a politician, where you have to spend half your time schmoozing to get money from strangers. And like a politician, this money comes with strings attached. When you get money from Jeffrey Epstein, it comes with strings attached. The question is, what are those strings? Is it that he wants to just be involved in a certain type of scientific exploration, which is consciousness and AI and children? And where is this going? I'm not pretending to have all the answers, so far from it. This is just scratching the surface. There is so much more to know about this that I don't know. I might never know, and we might never know, but it is worth it's worth looking at this to try and figure out why there is a connection. And there clearly is one. Why there is a connection between pedophilia and artificial intelligence, and what that play is, and what they're trying to do with this. Are they trying to build AI robotic children so that they don't have to use real children for what they're up to? I don't know. I don't know that is a solution to their problem. Maybe there is no cure for being a pedophile. Maybe you're born that way, or you're screwed up when you're 3 years old by people and you just become a pedophile and that's it for life. And maybe the best case scenario is that you, instead of hurting real children, you hurt robotic children. I don't know. I'm not trying to make any sort of excuse for them, and I'm not trying to downplay, what they're doing. It's possible that is one angle for it. But the fact that he's making these little dolls, man,
yes.
It bothers me.
Yes, I mean, we've seen all the stories about Alexa and all these other home gadgets that send all of the information, all of the data back to who knows where. And now we're seeing how Jeffrey Epstein was very keen to get this Sophia, the little robot, into little girls' bedrooms. Now, you were also saying earlier on in the show that some of these characters connect into the trans movement. And me and you have been very vocal in the past that we have got absolutely no problem, no issue with what any consenting adult decides to do with their own body. Whatever gets them off, who the heck are we to argue with that? But this trans movement and this trans agenda that you hear people talking about is the fact that they're trying to get into the minds of the aforementioned children again.
Yeah.
So we can see how they're trying to confuse them. We can see how, speculating here, Charlie, how they're literally maybe almost able to spy on them in their bedrooms sometime very, very soon as well. And we've known, or at least we've speculated, I've speculated on the show before with other guests, Christopher Everard, Sabine McNeil, who's now serving a jail sentence, by the way, for covering the Hampstead case. And it's about the normalization of this sick, evil depravity where LGBT, very cool, consenting adults, do what you want. But they're going to try and normalize this stuff, Charlie. This is going to be the new thing, and they've been pushing it for some time, dude.
Well, yes. And this goes back to something that Tom DeLay said, and he was the former U.S. House Majority Leader. And he claims that the Justice Department had drafted a memo that spells out a dozen, quote, perversions, including bestiality and pedophilia, that it wants legalized. He said, quote, "We've found a secret memo coming out of the Justice Department. They're now going to go after 12 new perversions. Things like bestiality, polygamy, having sex with little boys, and making that legal," DeLay said.
And if people think we're just like being hyperbolic and making this up, I challenge anyone to explain to me why the media are so welcoming and fall over themselves to cover the story of young Desmond
Yeah.
who in my opinion should be taken away from his mother because
Oh, yes.
because of the abuse that child is going through. And if you don't think that child's been abused, folks, go and check out the videos of him getting money thrown at him by dirty perverts who are watching him dance on a stage. I'm not making this. We're not making this up, Charlie. This is the real world, you know?
We talked about this before. The guy that's with him in those videos that's doing all that, the dancing, there's two men. The two men that are with him on either side of him while he's sitting in front of that painting that says Rohypnol on it. One of them is Michael Allig. Michael Allig served 17 years in prison for murdering and dismembering his boyfriend drug dealer in New York and throwing the body in a suitcase in the Hudson River. He did time. He's a convicted murderer. This isn't debatable. This is the guy. He's in that movie Party Monster was about Michael Allig's life. There's been Dateline episodes about him. That's who that guy is. And you're going to let your 10-year-old Desmond, who the new trans superstar, hang out with him and go on Good Morning America and have Michael Strahan say, "Oh, Desmond, you're so brave doing all that." What is going on here? And I think Tom DeLay is right. I think he's not lying when he said they are trying to legalize 12 perversions. And I'm not trying to say that homosexuality is a perversion. To each his own. Like, do what you need to do. I know I have gay friends. I know gay people. That's their thing. They're born that way. That's fine. We're not talking about that. We're talking about bestiality and transgenderism and all of these crazy things that are an agenda that is being pushed. And like I mentioned, the Pritzker family, Pritzker. If you look them up, there's a lot of them. They all have about $2.5 billion each, but there's like 10 of them. And they are big into the funding of this. I mean, of all the things you could funding the push for transsexuality and to be sort of normalized, I don't understand the play here, except it's making me think that this is laying the groundwork and the foundation for the normalization of robots to become just another fetish or get citizenship or normalize them into the working world in some sort of way. You know, there's 53 different genders in Facebook. There might be a 54th, which is a robot, right? A legitimate robot. And so is Jeffrey Epstein working on both ends here, running blackmail operations with young kids and then also pushing this other end to try and normalize it and legalize it from the other end and getting these robots made? It's something to consider. I think that these agendas are overlapping, and I think they have something to do with one another. I think that the trans agenda has connections to transhumanism and AI. It's blurring the line between what is a male and a female slowly, a little bit here, a little bit. Oh, I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. I'm non-binary. Okay. Well, that's a step, right? But then what's the step from non-binary to I'm AI? That's a smaller step. You know what I mean? So this incremental pushing, the blurring of the lines between gender, there is no doubt about it that it's an agenda. There's no explanation for it other than it being an agenda, being pushed, because it came out of nowhere and it's everywhere. And if you didn't know better, you would think that transsexuals or it is contagious.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to arrive here for the first time ever on this planet from somewhere else and you were reading the news and watching stuff on the TV before you got here to try and acclimatize with what the world's like, you would probably think that every second person you're going to bump into is going to be a transgender or non-binary or something like that. Yet it's not like that. When you look at the percentages, it's quite low. So why this big push?
1 in 200.
Yeah. Which will be coming down all the time, I imagine, if this keeps getting pushed.
Yeah. It is. It's a strange thing. And any one of these things, if it was just on its own, you would examine it and it might not alarm you too much. But when you start to see these connections forming and these people, this overlap of people, and then, the mega group, like we talked about, some of the people in there, Steven Spielberg's done a lot of AI related movies too.
Yes.
how deep is he? E.T., AI, Minority Report, who's Steven Spielberg? What's his agenda? Yeah, he's got a lot of money. Yeah, he makes movies. But what is going on here? I don't know for sure, but it's something that it's interesting to examine, and these characters are very protected, very wealthy, and
Where's this
I hope
coming
that
from?
it doesn't end here.
Me and you are both into David Icke. I've had him on the show. You spoke to him over at an Acapulco. See, I almost got it right that time. Almost.
You got it. Yeah, no, that was good. That
Nearly,
was good.
yeah. And when we come back on the other side, we'll discuss how David Icke's research and the stuff that he talks about ties into this as well, because I wonder where this is coming from. Is it being pushed from this physical reality, or is it coming from somewhere else? Join us after the break. Don't go anywhere, folks. So, final segment of today's Kev Baker Show with Charlie Robinson, who has absolutely knocked it out of the park today with some of the connections that he's made, the way he's put this presentation together for us. Not the easiest stuff to listen to, I admit that. But like I said earlier on, not all truth is comfortable, and the truth's the truth. And this is what we're laying out here. And during the break, myself and Charlie were saying again, we've been throwing a lot of names out there tonight. Ben Gertzel been one, a few others, and I'm sure Charlie will agree with me after I say this, or maybe he won't, but we're not accusing these people of doing any of the kind of things that Jeffrey Epstein stands accused of right now. However, the connections are interesting, and it's important to note that the money that's been going from Epstein and these characters into AI, I've kind of been shocked by this, Charlie. Between the NASA, the Ben Gertzel, the Sophia, the young robot, this is kind of, it's not very often I'm shocked on my own show, but I am today.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not trying to say that Ben Gertzel's up to no good. I think he's probably just a robotics scientist nerd who has this great idea and these amazing skills, and he's raising money from Yuri Milner, who's not necessarily a bad guy. I mean, he's just an investor guy. And I understand that you look for money wherever you can get it. That's part of your gig. If you're a CEO, you are constantly raising money. And if you're somebody that started a robotics company and you're trying to sell some idea that doesn't really exist because you can't build it because you don't have the money, you might have to take money from whoever offers it to you. And Yuri Milner's not the worst person in the world to take money from because he's got major ties. Jeffrey Epstein he's the worst person in the world to take money from. But once again, if you're trying to launch your business and you need money, it's possible that you just say either screw it, give me the money, man. That's not my that's not my problem. I'm in robotics.
Exactly.
I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, even on a smaller scale here, I rely a lot on the listeners out there. I've got Patreon. You've come to the live on YouTube. You see people, chipping in on super chats, things like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if somebody comes along to me, some billionaire, saying, Kev, here you go, son. There are a couple of million, couple of billion, right? You take that. You live happily ever after. You keep doing your show, though. And maybe from time to time I'll come along and I'll ask to come on, or I'll bring you a guest or something like that. Dude, the dollar signs would be flying about my eyes and I wouldn't even hear that part. I'd be on my way to the bank and I would take it because there's my show funded. And again, it's probably a really crap example, but scientists are no different. Probably been turned down umpteen times, people rolling their eyes at them going, oh, that's a stupid idea. And then along comes Mr. Moneybags. Well, Ben, this is how we're going to do it. In fact, I'm going to throw money at you. How does that sound? Where'd I sign?
Yeah, it sounds great if you're looking for money and this guy's got money and you want to question it. I mean, you do your due diligence to a certain point, but then maybe you don't want to find out where that money came from. If you're maybe you do. Maybe there are a lot of people that have sent back, a lot of politicians that have sent back the donations that Jeffrey Epstein provided to them once they found out. It didn't come straight from him. It came from one of his companies in the Virgin Islands, and they're, donating $20,000 to some guy's campaign. The guy realizes who it is. They do the check. They go, oh, I can't take money from this guy, and they send the check back. So sometimes that happens. It happens when it's $10, $15, $20,000. I don't know, when it's $6.5 million. Maybe Ben Goertzel just says, I don't want to know. I don't know where it came from, and I don't want to know. I'm doing robots. I'm not doing islands. I don't care about his stuff. That's separate from what I'm doing. There's ways to justify it. So I'm with you on that. We're not trying to say that he's up to no good. We're trying to say that if Epstein is involved in AI, you need to wonder why he's involved. I understand why Yuri Milner's involved in it. He's looking to get in on the cutting edge. And I understand why Peter Thiel's involved in it too, although I don't trust him. But these are guys that are used to making money. They've got lots of money. Now they have the ability to seed finance all these startup companies. So they're out looking for it. What's the next big tech thing? AI, robotics. Sure. Everybody knows that's going to be a big thing. So it's no surprise to see these guys and to see the venture capital funds like John Doerr and Kleiner Perkins and Draper Fisher Jurvetson and all of these Anderson Horowitz. These are the firms that you're going to see financing all of this. Now that's not surprising to me. It is surprising to me when you get the guy that's running a child trafficking operation that's also financing AI projects. That makes me very concerned because he's definitely up to no good. The question is, what is the plan? And Jeffrey Epstein strikes me as the type of guy that has a plan for lots of things.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what he's been accused of, and then the fact he's throwing money at getting a robotic toy into young girls' bedrooms. No, nothing to worry about there then, eh? It's totally unconnected, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Now then,
I mean, Peter Thiel's he's financing companies that are involved in taking blood from children.
Ambrosia. Yep.
Yeah.
And Peter Thiel, I mean,
that's another reason.
Yeah, I think he basically throws money at everything. I kind of look at him like the civilian version of DARPA. You fund as many of these kind of startups as you can, and if 5% of them end up making it into the world of business, bonus. You've got those companies, you get your money from them. That's what these people do, So again, I'm not necessarily saying that dude's evil either. We're not accusing anyone unjustly of anything. We're just showing the connections between all of this. And I'm very kind of blown away by this AI connection to Epstein. I truly am. And now it makes sense why Nano Girl in the chat room over at YouTube last night was saying that the connections into the tech world are what really disturbs her the most, because that's the stuff she looks at. That's what she covers. And I had no idea it went this far. But it's kind of glad you came on today to kind of fill in the gaps for me. And we're going to try and we're going to step back from the whole thing now, because we're going to talk about David Icke for a moment, if that's okay, Charlie. Because I've been diving into his book yet again, everything. What I can't remember the name. Not everything you should know but have never been told. That's the one, right?
Yeah.
And
whoever thinks of lightening the mood by moving into the David Icke topics.
I know.
When you must be talking about some dark stuff. If you're like, let's lighten the mood, let's talk about David Icke.
And I think it ties into this because it's quite hard to understand how people could end up this way, how they could become so corrupt and evil. And when you start to look at the work of Icke and the fact that he talks about the manipulation of the human race, this unseen force, in the other dimension, whatever way you want to explain it, and their manipulation of reality, then I think we have to start looking at that side here. I mean, how much of this has been pushed from entities, from a force, from evil, whatever name you want to put on it. And it's, folks, let me say right now, I need to emphasize this. I'm in no way giving any of these criminals a way out. I'm not making excuses for them. But I'm trying to think, where the hell's this coming from? because this isn't human. This is evil, Charlie. Beyond evil.
This is, David Icke took a lot of heat for a lot of years about the things that he said, the information he had, and the way in which he put it out, only to be proven right about so many of the things. But one of the more polarizing topics that he had was that he would make the statement that pedophilia is the glue that keeps this whole system connected together. And to somebody like us or the listeners that aren't involved in that world, that sounds like a preposterous statement. It sounds like sort of like an unnatural sort of connection. I mean, you would say money is the thing that connects all of us together or keeps this whole thing working. I could buy that, but to say that pedophilia does, how so? Well, he laid it out and said that the people that are in positions of power use it for a variety of reasons. They blackmail people with it. You saw in the EU with Ted Heath being blackmailed by the Germans to give away all the fishing rights because they had the goods on him being a psychopathic child killer and rapist.
Yep.
And everyone wonders why they got such a bad deal at the EU. Well, that's why. That's part of the reasons. But if you look around and you take a step back and you start to try and make sense of people in positions of power, politicians or people in like State Department, maybe not necessarily elected officials, but people that have high-ranking job titles, you'll see them do something that is uncharacteristically unusual, and you don't really think about it too much. But now looking back on it, if you look at it through the lens of, well, that guy did something uncharacteristic of him, made a comment, made a decision, voted some way, passed a resolution, did something. If you look at it now through the lens of, was this man being blackmailed? Oh, well, then that would explain a whole lot. If you think about the decisions being made in politics on a daily basis, and you keep in mind that blackmail is a huge part of this, then the way the world works starts to make a lot more sense, unfortunately. It is people being, compromise operations that are being run. None of this is new. Jeffrey Epstein didn't invent this. The Mossad didn't invent this. They just perfected it, and they're just the newest version of this. But this has been going on for a long, long time. You see this in the British royal family, and this is what Icke talked about, that they use pedophilia as a control mechanism for people. It's the exact opposite of what you would think. You would think, oh, this guy is going to run for office. We want to get the best candidates into office. Let's see what this guy's about. Dig into all of these, people that are running for president. See what you can find. Hey, well, we discovered that the candidate X is a closeted pedophile, right? He's a hardcore pedophile. Now, you and I would say, oh, well, we got to remove that guy. That guy can't be considered as the next potential president. But in their world, that is exactly the guy that they want to be the next potential president, because he has the ability to be compromised. And if you have the dirt on him, you basically are the president now, and you control things because of that. They've got you. They've got you forever. So people are looking around at government, and Icke talked about this. Why is government so screwed up? Why are these people such awful human beings? Why are they always getting caught doing stupid things? Because that is intended to be the case. They want defective human beings in there. They want crazy people. They want pedophiles. They want alcoholics. They want drug addicts. They want child rapists. They want people that are compulsive liars. They want those people. Those are the people they're actively searching for to run this world, because if you know their secrets, then you control them, and you can do it from the shadows and not have your identity not be known. So is it the Mossad blackmailing people? Yeah, probably. Yeah, they're definitely involved in it, but it's not limited to them. There's a lot of people going on. So, why Epstein can sit in his jail cell with a big smile on his face is that he knows he's got the goods on a lot of people. And if he goes away, that information could come out on a dead man's trigger, or if he starts, or he could cut himself a deal, although that would be a really bad idea. He'd also be cutting his own throat. I think he knows that, so whatever. Everything is a bit backwards. And David Icke was talking about this, and people thought, you're out of your mind, David. You're a nutter. You've gone off the deep end. Hey, it's time to give David Icke a little bit more credit because he was calling this 2 decades ago, and he is 100% right.
And he continues to be proven more right as each month goes by. I mean, the scientific world, I mean, when Ike started talking about the fact we were living in a simulation and things, obviously people rolled their eyes. But more and more now, studies are coming out saying, by golly, guess what? We're looking at reality, and you know what? Kind of works like a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you wonder who's behind this simulation, this unseen force. And I've seen somebody in the chat room mentioning the reptilians, and the minute you mention Ike, that's going to come up. But whether they're reptilians, whatever they are, they're the ones that are keeping this planet, humanity, reality, as dark as it is. And it's that energy that they feed off, be it the fear that's in most of the population after watching the mainstream news or just going about the real world. It's, you know, it's a scary place, right? They like to keep us in fear. And then you go down to what we're talking about tonight and the children's aspect of it. And this is where they're getting their real energy from. And whether these royal families and elite bloodlines are truly hybrid or husks for these entities or just evil to the core, it's about something bigger than what all of us can appreciate here. And Ike has been talking about this, and maybe even Ike himself can't quite explain what's going on in this other realm that controls this world. But I tell you what, I think as time goes by, like you say, he is getting proven more correct all the time.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, he talked about, you know, Prince Andrew's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Those pictures are out there. Those are impossible to hide from, right? Yep. He and Jeff walking around through New York, you know, there's the picture of the two of them. They're friends. He's on the flight logs. He's been at the island. There's pictures of him with Virginia Roberts. He's in it, right? He knows these people. Is he a pedophile? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But he knows these people. He is in that circle. And who else was in that circle and untouchable, like we talked about earlier? Jimmy Savile. And what was Jimmy Savile doing? Jimmy Savile was running blackmail operations as well, but he was also running satanic ritual abuse ceremonies as well. There is quite a bit of evidence saying and proving that Jimmy Savile was thought to be a wizard.
Yep.
He was the royal family's personal wizard. And I know that sounds crazy, but look, the fact that there's a royal family sounds crazy. You know what I mean? That sounds as outdated as anything. And to have like, oh, the royal family with their own wizard. Well, look, sounds crazy to us the first time you hear that, just like most of the stuff Ike was talking about sounds crazy the first time you hear it. But is it starting to make a little bit more sense that the people that have access to children and have access to very powerful people tend to be protected? And I would say that Epstein was protected. That 13-month plea deal that Alex Acosta signed for him was a joke, and everybody knows it. It cost Acosta his job, and as well it should, among other people. So there is an active effort to protect Jeffrey Epstein, much like there was an active effort to protect Jimmy Savile. And I would say, and I don't know about the necrophilia, and I don't know about the, you know, Jeffrey Epstein ever donating his time to work at hospitals, Broadmoor and the like. I don't know if he ever did that, but I'd be willing to bet that Jimmy Savile and Jeffrey Epstein had a hell of a lot in common.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And I've got a quick clip to play here. I don't think this show's ever going to make it onto any form of YouTube or anything else. So I don't think I have to worry about too much of that, but it's only a 2-minute clip. People might have heard this before. I know we've got a lot of long-time listeners, but I still think there's value in playing this because this is Jimmy Savile speaking to Parkinson, one of the biggest TV shows back in the day over here in the UK. And, well, at that point he winks and lights up his cigar. You know?
Jingle jangle.
How many people can get access to the royal family like that unless you are some kind of, wizard would explain it, procurer, whatever you want to call it?
Well, he said in interviews, you know, I get things done. They like me because I work deep cover. That's what he talked about with his connection to the royal family. I get things done and I work deep cover. Well, I bet you do, Jimmy, or did. It's
There's a special place in hell for these people, dude.
for sure. And if you ever listen to that Smith song, Panic, as one of the greatest bands of all time, the Smiths.
You like the Smiths, don't you?
I love the Smiths.
Yeah, you quote
but there's a
Morrissey
line
often,
in there
yeah.
where it says, the lead side streets that you slip down, in provincial towns you jog around, hang the DJ, hang the DJ, hang the DJ. It's about Jimmy Savile. It's about his old days of running during, he would run for his charities. You would see, lived in Leeds. He was the DJ on BBC.
And of course, it's just a coincidence that the Yorkshire Ripper happened to hide one of his first victims in Savile's garden. That's just a coincidence. Don't worry about that, folks.
Yeah.
It was just by chance, and just by chance he used to take celebrities to go and visit Peter Sutcliffe after he had been jailed. Famous people who Savile used to take to Broadmoor Hospital to meet these sickos. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm lost for words at times, Charlie. I truly, truly am, dude.
I mean, I feel like sometimes we're the only decent human beings on the planet. There's so much darkness going on here, and I don't like to dwell on it. But at the same time, I feel like it's important. So much of it has been kept secret for so long, and that's the reason why it continues. So at some point, you have to talk about it. You have to make it. I'm not saying talk about it with your kids or anything like that, but I'm just saying talk about it with friends that you know and be aware of these things and understand that this is kind of how it does happen, and this is how it happens. And part of these people that you see on your nightly news on television and these different shows and actors and hosts and some of them are involved in this. And Hollywood is a dirty, dirty place. And I wouldn't be surprised if through more uncovering, we find Epstein with ties to Hollywood, because Hollywood is definitely dirty, involved in this sort of thing. But I would keep your eyes open. Like I said, this is just the scratching the surface of who this guy is, what he's been doing, who the people around him are, what they've been doing, what their families have been doing, and is this a coincidence? And how do you get that many people that have occult ties, ritualistic abuse backgrounds, and parents that are billionaires and spies and getting murdered and stealing programs? I mean, the Maxwell family is in the spy business. Let's just be honest. That's what they were. From Robert Maxwell to Ghislaine Maxwell to Christine Maxwell, they are in the spying business. And so is it that is it that difficult to put the two together and realize Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were meant for each other?
Yep.
They could work together. She could get she could get the kids, he could get the money. They could work together, run the spying operation the way dear old dad used to. I mean, this was a match made in hell.
Well, we're almost out of time, and again, I have to thank you. As much as it's been a horrid topic, it has to be talked about, but the way you've strung this together, dude, I really appreciate the connections you've made here. And for anyone listening out there, you take this information away and you make of it what you will. But this is the real world, and as shady as it is, we've spoke about it. Next time you're on, Charlie, I think we'll get into the Sasquatch.
Yes.
We'll probably talk more about Area 51 getting stormed. And get that? I mean, I laughed when I first seen this maybe a couple of days ago when somebody said, all this Area 51 stuff going viral on Facebook and Twitter. How convenient it knocks Epstein off the Twitter feed. And I laughed at that point, right? But this is the most ridiculous joke LARP ever, the Area 51 thing. But the virility of it, the way it's getting spread everywhere by algorithms, it's certainly a convenient distraction, shall we say, from some of the other stuff that's going on out there and some of the real topics that we could be talking about. So I thank you again, brother. How's your Facebook jail time going? When are you out?
I think I've got like 2 days left of my sentence, unless I shank somebody while I'm inside.
I'll be waiting at the digital gates for you, sir. So for another night, we are out of time. Stay tuned for Lucky and Dr. Brooks Agnew. I'll be live with Chris Anatra on the show tomorrow night. Mandela Effects special for Kev's birthday. I hope you're all going to enjoy it half as much as I do. Wherever you are, make it TFR.